The weak cannot interfere with the path laid out by our master. Crush them underfoot.
What's going on, guys? Running back with another replay, and it's going to be a Greenskins versus Khorne showdown here on Battle for Itza, which is a great map. Always a pleasure to play on this one. Going to be bringing the double skull cannon, the dreaded double skull cannon, which I've been finding a lot of success with in a lot of matchups that are kind of tricky for Khorne at times, for sure. They do a lot very well. They put a lot of range pressure on your opponent and can kind of flip the script from how Khorne usually plays. Getting a little bit of fire in here early going, killing some Orc Boar Boy spears. Very interesting unit, very fun. This was the first time I was facing up against them, and very curious to see how they perform. Skull Cannon's just getting some free value, shooting at a variety of targets. Not doing amazingly, but, you know, giving me a little bit of initiative, so to speak, which Khorne typically lacks at this stage of the opening battle. Orc Boar Boy Biggins coming in, lots of Arrow Boys. The Crimson Killers are on the field with Grimgor, holding with his boys in the middle here, daring any and all to approach. You're next and Get Snick being on the table, very powerful abilities, and Valkia is definitely not going to be wanting to take a fight against him at all. High ground is flipping to me, as well as the number 3 here, holding on the low ground with the Marauders and Chaos Warriors, some Horsemen backing them up with the Skull Cannons in the middle, getting a little damage on those Orc Boar Boy Biggins, while the Spawn, Exalted Bloodletters, Marauders, all securing the number 1, and gearing up for a bit of a fight for sure. The Biggins are looking to get aggressive in the backfield, but taking Throwing Axe fire and damage from the Skull Cannons. Just a quick little tactics tip for you. When you've got the double skull cannon and your opponent's chasing with cavalry, you know, these Boar Boy Biggins are a counter unit to these guys. Spreading them out like this gives you a good opportunity to get some crossfire here. Just depending on where your opponent is trying to chase them to. If he commits to diving one with a cavalry unit, the other one is going to get nice side shots like this skull cannon here did. Getting lots of model kills and picking off more and more as they go in. Fury's following up behind, and these guys are well and truly surrounded at this point. The Marauder throwing axes, taking a bit of damage from the Archer fire. Gonna be microing them back just to follow up and finish off these Biggins here, which is very important. And using the Chaos Warriors to tank some of the arrow fire, while kiting back away from the Crimson Killers as best as possible. Do not want to take a straight-up fight against these guys. They will destroy me. Up here on the high ground, starting to get aggressive, pushing some Marauders around behind to get on top of the Arrow Boys, while in the middle, the Spawn do take a bit of a bad charge, getting a little bit of damage taken from the spears, but the Exalted Bloodletters following up very shortly behind. Gonna start completely crushing this unit, which is really nice for me. Getting rid of this spear unit is gonna give me some opportunities to bring in some Flesh Hounds and maybe help out this high ground fight for sure. The Furies do unfortunately get intercepted by the Squig Herd, who get sneaky stab and popped on them. The Night Goblin Shaman getting a nice cast there, augmenting his fellow beasties, fellow haggard little gremlin type units, and doing some nice damage, while here on the low ground, I'm missing out on it a little bit, but the Skull Cannons, Valkia, popping Sloupnir here with the Skull Cannon fire, absolutely dumpstering the Crimson Killers here, while the Marauder throwing axes are taking some nasty fire, and followed up by some Boar Boy Biggins chasing down my other throwing axe unit here. Skull Cannons firing through the unit as they charge in, killing a few models, and I'm going to need to answer here really quickly, so I bring in some Minotaurs, and the Furies here are going to do really nicely. They've just got great combat stats. They can do some really good damage here, and they're making it, they're showing their stuff there for sure. Furies here, unfortunately, just getting harried to pieces by the Squig Herd, while Marauders and the Chaos Spawn, they are taking this fight against the Orc Boys and the Squig Herd. Gonna do some nice work here, but taking fire from the Arrow Boys, who are racking up the value here, but getting another nice fight with the Exalted Bloodletters, who have gotten into some really nice positions. The Orc Arrow Boys trying to line up for some volleys, but the angle of fire is pretty awkward for them firing up the hill. And the Exalted Bloodletters completely routing these Orc Boys, while the Marauders and the Exalted Bloodletters are getting countercharged by the Squig Herds here. Valkia and the Chaos Warriors do fight off the Orc Boy Biggins here. She's trying to get after these guys and just chip down the models. This is the best use for her in this matchup with the current composition of my opponent's forces. And I do manage to kill off the Boar Boy Biggins here. They are broken. I don't know where all the unit is. They've run off the back of the map here. Some of them are just a little tangled up, I guess. While using the Minotaurs and the Skull Cannons in tandem to run over this Orc Boy unit that is very overstretched in my lines. The Flesh Hounds disengaging from the Orc Boy Spears just to finish off this Orc Boy unit and maybe jump onto something else. Furies getting some nice damage on the Arrow Boys, but getting countercharged by the Squig Herds, which have been doing great work here in this matchup so far. Getting good value. The Boar Boy Biggins do collapse on the rear of these Furies as well, but they are taking some Skull Cannon fire in the meantime, getting mashed up pretty badly, honestly, while the Spawn here still fighting next to the Marauders, who are not engaged in combat. I don't know why they dropped their order for getting in this fight. Tattered Spear unit capping up the number 1 right now. A little slow on the draw, not noticing that in time, but getting some nice engagements elsewhere on the battlefield, running over this unit of Arrow Boys with the Marauder Horsemen throwing axes. One of them doing very nicely for themselves, and a huge Sword of Khorne going off back here. Almost missed this, man. Getting great damage on this Arrow Boy unit. It's kind of hard to get back here on them, so I honestly think it's kind of worth it. And Flesh Hounds and the Minotaurs mulching through the Biggins here while doing some damage to the Goblin Spider Riders. Valkia does sight the Shaman here, so she's definitely going to be diving on top of this little guy, trying to get good damage. In the meantime, Skull Cannons doing their thing, peeling away from Grimgor, who's been doing some serious damage to them in the meantime. Exalted Bloodletters following up yet another rout of an Orc Boy unit. Getting countercharged by the Squig Herds a little bit. Trying to collapse in on top of the Orc Biggins here, who are going to be very difficult to kill. Did not realize this was a Biggin unit. Thought it was a couple of Orc Boys. I'd just been seeing so many Boar Boy Biggins coming out that I thought, you know, no way my opponent's got anything in the bank. But Orcs in general just swarm really well. I am getting some decent damage on these guys out here. And the Minotaurs, unfortunately, not going to be able to escape. I'm not sure what's going on with the orders here, but they get a decent little charge off at the last second, and they're going to do some good work against these Orc Boar Boys, dropping a Sloupnir just to do a little bit of extra damage, while the Flesh Hounds follow up, and they're going to get a rear charge on top of these Orc Boar Boy Biggins. Gonna break their leadership here in just a moment, and definitely going to be able to get a nice opportunity to chase this unit down here, while the poor Night Goblin Shaman, not having any support to save him, does start taking some serious damage and breaks, and is going to be chased off the battlefield by Valkia. Either that or outright killed. I can't quite remember right now. But putting me in a nice position. I am losing the number 1 objective on the high ground, but I have secured the number 3 low ground and the number 2. While the Skull Cannons just regenerating some ammo, running over these Orc Boys is a pretty safe fight for them. They're going to regen some health and the ammo while they're in combat here, giving me a nice opportunity to bank some resources to maybe deal with the Boar Boy Biggins. More of them coming out here. Very persistent is my opponent with these guys. Flesh Hounds getting some good value and chasing off a Boar Boy Biggin unit that did have some decent health when they broke, so that's really nice for me. Not going to give my opponent an opportunity to get any shock damage with those guys and the model counts that they've got there. Chaos Warriors tied up on Grimgor, doing a little bit of damage to him, but getting whooped on by him pretty badly, honestly. Maybe should have just disengaged them here, but they are tying up a very expensive Lord and keeping them from getting onto an objective and start locking that down, which is pretty decent for me. Flesh Hounds back here, mopping up some spears and Arrow Boys. And my opponent really is pretty tattered, but I'm also not looking too hot either. I've got some Marauders up here, Furies, flying overhead, a healthy Minotaur, and the skull cannons with Valkia, but that's about it. You know, I'm losing these hounds back here. They did, unfortunately, get caught by the Boarboy Biggins here. 95 speed, not quite able to outchase the 70 when the pursuit angle was just too favorable. He just kind of closed me off and jumped on top of those guys. Losing them was pretty painful. And this Fleshhound unit I'm just going to sack in here just to get some damage, if possible, on these tattered units here, and maybe save the number 3 from collapsing here for just a moment. So, losing another Fleshhound, but getting some nice damage on the Biggins here. The Skull Cannon's actually doing some good work with the Furies overlaid on top, and getting a pretty favorable trade there. These guys have gotten some pretty nice value, 800 and 900 respectively. Or 800 each, pretty precisely, 813, 815 actually, very symmetrical. Khorne loves to see the number 8, that's like Khorne's holy number or something like that. I'm not 100% sure on that, but I do lose a unit of Furies. These Furies, pretty tattered, they're trying to help against this Boarboy Biggin here. They were going to dive on top of the Orc Boys, but I'm going to use them to countercharge the Biggins here. Tried to keep them from getting a ton of good charge damage off of the Minotaurs, and do block up most of them, taking some nasty damage on the Furies, but that's much better than taking a bunch of damage on the Minotaurs here. And a Sword of Khorne does go down, my second one this game. Doing some damage to the Squig Herd, Boarboy Biggins, and rinsing the Orc Boy unit that was left here. And the Minotaurs are going to get a nice engage against these Biggins, absolutely mulching through this unit even as they're retreating. I'm going to pull out with these guys now before these Squig Herds can collapse on top of me. And this Marauder maneuvering from the high ground here, from the number 1, getting onto the low. Gonna start chewing through the Orc Biggins with some support from the Skull Cannons, who are now up to 900 value each, while Marauders following up. Gonna take a fight against the Orc Boys. Marauders do actually trade upwards into Orc Boys pretty well. As long as Wa isn't active, Marauders are gonna win this fight, but maybe not if the Squig Herds get involved. But we'll have to see there. Another Boarboy Biggin comes out, and the Minotaurs taking the fight. They really don't have anywhere to run, being slower. So I just kited back a little bit, just to give myself the opportunity to bring out some Marauder Horsemen to support a little bit quicker, and Valkia as well. And the Minotaurs, man, taking this fight. 13 models left, taking a lot of HP damage, but taking this Boarboy Biggin out is putting me in a really nice position, because now all that the Orcs have for mobility is some Squig Herds here, and the Force Goblin Spider Riders, who are mopping up a few Chaos Warriors out there, very tattered and beleaguered unit, but Exalted Bloodletters coming out. My opponent doesn't have a ton of answers for these guys. The Arrow Boys are trying to get some fire on top of them, but not having a ton of models, and the Skull Cannon is going to start going out after them. Finding one random Squig to block its path up, though, is very annoying, unfortunately for me. Valkia taking the fight on the Arrow Boys, and gonna fight the Squig Herds, who do decent damage to her, since she is infantry-sized, but they're not an amazing unit against her. She usually fights them off pretty capably. It's not a bad position for her to be in. Another Arrow Boy coming out here, man. Good summons by Chimbambu, and this game is so close. I am technically down in value, but you gotta remember that the Swords of Khorne are not truly reflected here. They've probably gotten about, maybe 1,200 value. So you can tack that onto my total there. And I am using the Minotaurs here. They are crushing the Squig Herds that are out here on the flank. This tattered Squig Herd is running. This one shattered completely. And the Minotaur is going to try and find one last little bit of value. Up to 1440. Very nicely done for them. Doing their job and trading evenly in this matchup can be a little challenging for them, but they're very necessary. Very much need them to answer the Biggins. Your Fleshhounds and Furies are great, but having the hard-hitting AP to countercharge units that do overextend and get caught in the backlines like this at times is very important. So, turning and fighting here with the Horsemen throwing axes now that there's a little bit of Marauder support underfoot. I'm going to try and break this position. The Skull Cannon trying to get a shot in here. Not finding any success, though. A little bit blocked up by the Marauders. Some Chaos Warriors coming back out. They're going to be real nice here. And this poor Boar Boy Biggin just really overextending too far into the back line. Couldn't follow up and charge down the Exalted Bloodletters in time, who did kill all of those Force Goblin Spider Riders that were out here, absolutely massacring them in this fight here. Here they are. All these poor spiders got mulched by these elite infantry. These guys are so strong, man. Morgrim's Mangy Marauders coming out, getting some good fire on the Skull Cannon, up to 1200 value on this guy. And the Flesh Hounds just picking off the models of the Biggins here. Doing good work cleaning those guys up. And just to take one look around the battlefield, I do have the ticket lead. I've been swapping objectives with Chimbambu this entire time here. The Orc Boys and the Error Boys here holding on the point with Grimgor, who's still very scary. You know, down to about half health, but has more HP at this point than Valkia does. He's got 7,100, which is kind of crazy. Very fighty, very sustainable over the course of a long game. Not a lot of value on him, to be fair, but neither does Valkia. Both of the lords here, you know, maybe lacking the perfect targets for them to fight. Valkia is able to fly around and, you know, provide the encourage effect and influence the battlefield in a few other ways. Just going after the Orc Boar Boys where possible, killing some squig herds. Gonna pressure the Mangy Marauders here, who can do some pretty good damage to her if they get their bows on target. She does have a shield to mitigate some of the damage. I'm going to pull back a little bit. Don't want to lose any more hit points on her. Want her to be nice and functional if I do have to go after Grimgor in a bit here. And the Marauder Horseman with throwing axes, just getting some shots in here against Grimgor, as well as the Orc Boys, trying to work down the infantry unit first. And pulling Grimgor off of the point here, he is going after the Chaos Warriors. Don't super want to take this fight against him. I've already seen what he can do against Chaos Warriors. He did win pretty comfortably last time. So, more than anything, just focusing in on using the Marauders here to kill the Orc Boys. Skull Cannon helping out here, getting some nice damage. And the Exalted Bloodletters really haven't gotten much to do. Being shot up by the Mangy Marauders and the Error Boys here, but getting a massive collapse on the Error Boys here. Minotaurs and the Horsemen here collapsing on top of these units. These throwing axes have been actually doing more melee fighting than anything so far this game. They've been going after Error Boys when possible, while the Minotaurs, man, and this unit didn't do too hot the first time around, but they've got a dearth of targets to go after. The Squig Herds are going to suffer against them here. Then I can collapse onto the Force Goblin Spider Riders and follow up onto the Error Boys. Here, the Orc Boys do break against the Marauders and the Skull Cannon, but Skull Cannon struggling a bit against the Biggins here, who are chasing them down, and the Mangy Marauders do get countercharged by the Furies. Looking really nice for me. I do have a double cap here. The number 2 is flipping to me very slowly as the Chaos Warriors fighting against Grimgor. He's not quite able to outcap them, so I am going to secure this middle objective, and it is probably going to be game here. My opponent having to commit a lot of stuff up here to deal with some very tattered Marauders who are holding this objective, and another Sword of Khorne coming in at the last second just to finish off these Error Boys, really trashing them. And the Exalted Bloodletters, they really didn't get a whole lot done in this most recent summon, but forcing my opponent to bring in a lot of ranged units rather than melee onto the field to try and answer them, so giving me some opportunities to use the superior mobility that I had in the late game there, thanks to the Skull Cannons and the Marauder Horsemen, as well as Furies. Furies obviously very good. Flesh Hounds coming out at the end there. They weren't quite influencing that fight there at the end. Mostly just the Minotaurs and the Skull Cannons, able to jump on top of the Error Boys and shut them down, giving my Marauders a good chance to get some value, while the Bloodletters just forcing my opponent to have to play a lot more honest than he really wanted to. And, yeah, securing me a victory there on the tickets, man. It was very close. Really well played by Chimbambu, and the game is going to crash here, I believe. So I'll see you guys later. I don't know what it is. This game was too strong for Total War. Anyways, GG's. Peace, guys.